I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
Yes.
I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman,
Because I
may I
have
give my
answer
answer on that?
If-
It's
Here's
a political
the question.
joke, and I need to give my answer
Yeah,
on that.
we'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next
Chairman,
question.
it's my time.
Within 40
Chairman.
minutes, you asked me a question.
You can
Within
give me-
40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes
You
of
ha-
me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700.
co-conspirator.
He just unredacted that document live, in front of Congress, on camera. And what was underneath that redaction was not a minor administrative footnote. It was a name, listed not for tax evasion, not for money laundering, for child sex trafficking, as a co-conspirator. And the Department of Justice hid it. Bondi said they corrected it within 40 minutes. Massie said, within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed. That exchange is now permanently in the congressional record. And it is only the beginning of what Massie brought into that room today. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victim's lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victim's survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman.
This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
Yes.
I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question.
You can
Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700,
co-conspirator.
and we invited you
Show
in.
the video.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed
He
politician.
wanted
Gentlemen,
You need to
I
get
want
on
you to
these
watch the video.
matters.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules
himself, there
here.
is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you can't-
Watergate.
when I don't answer a question the
This
way you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to
most
know at what
transparent-
point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it
Time is
back on the
up.
screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has
Which,
expired.
may she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired. She didn't answer the question.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
I would,
point of
Mr.
order.
Chairman, could she answer the question?
Chairman, I was wondering,
The gentlelady's allowed, the Attorney General's allowed to respond the way she wants to respond to any member's questions, Republican, Democrat.
All right, I have unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized for a UC.
All right, this is an example. I'm submitting these 302 forms that are entirely redacted, even when you go to look at
Without
them.
objection.
I'm submitting a witness statement that implicates Les Wexner.
Without objection.
I'm submitting an article from the New York Times that the DOJ released nude photos and
Without objection.
identifiable pictures of the victims. I'm submitting a letter from A.G. Bondi to Kash Patel, imploring him to quit keeping the files when you found out that they were keeping files from you, because
Without
they're still redacting files that you.
Chairman, are we going to
Without
recess for votes?
Yes, we are.
I'm submitting for unanimous consent a document of 17 individuals who've resigned because of the Epstein files.
Without objection.
Let us go through exactly what Massie just proved in that hearing room. Because this is not one mistake. This is a pattern. And the documents he submitted into the congressional record prove it, piece by piece. Document 1. A victim's lawyer sent the Department of Justice a list of names not to release. The Department of Justice received that email. They knew those names were supposed to be protected. And then they released that exact email in the document production, exposing the very survivors who had asked for protection. And we know they touched the document because they redacted the lawyer's name. They just left the survivor's name visible. That is not an accident. You do not selectively redact one name on a document and accidentally leave another. Someone looked at that document, made a choice. And the choice they made was to protect the lawyer and expose the survivor. Document 2. A file titled Child Sex Trafficking Co-Conspirators, fully redacted, until Massie forced the unredaction live on camera. And underneath that redaction was Les Wexner, listed not for tax evasion, not for financial crimes, not for anything other than child sex trafficking, as a co-conspirator in the Epstein network. Wexner's name appears more than 4,000 times in the Epstein files, according to Bondi's own admission. But in the specific document that lists him as a child sex trafficking co-conspirator, the document that carries the most serious legal weight, his name was hidden, until a Republican congressman from Kentucky unredacted it in front of the entire country. Bondi said the correction was made within 40 minutes. Massie's response was the only response that matters. Within 40 minutes of me catching you, red-handed. Document 3. The FD 302 forms. These are the FBI interview documents that contain the testimony of survivors, the names of the men they identified to investigators. When you go to the Department of Justice portal to see what is behind the redactions in these documents, you find another redaction. A redaction behind a redaction. The names of the men implicated by survivor testimony are buried under layers of black markers that the public and Congress cannot get through. And then there are the files that have been pulled down from the website entirely, gone, no longer searchable, no longer accessible. Files that existed and have now been removed so that not even the redactions can be found. This is the cover-up Massie described. Not a theory, not a political accusation. 3 physical documents held up in a congressional hearing showing exactly how it works. Survivor names exposed, predator names hidden, FBI testimony buried under double redactions, files pulled from public access entirely. And then Massie submitted 4 more items into the congressional record before the hearing recessed for votes. The New York Times article confirming the DOJ released nude photographs and identifiable pictures of survivors, the letter from Bondi to Patel imploring him to stop withholding files from her, proving that even Bondi knew files were being kept from Congress, the FD 302 forms with double redactions as physical evidence, and a document listing 17 individuals who have resigned specifically because of the Epstein files. 17 people resigned. That number is now in the congressional record. 17 people inside the system who saw what was happening and walked away rather than be part of it. Bondi called Massie a failed politician. She accused him of having Trump derangement syndrome. She pivoted to Merrick Garland. She went back 4 administrations. She did everything except answer the 2 questions Massie asked directly. Who is responsible for releasing the survivor names? Who made the decision to obscure Les Wexner's name as a child sex trafficking co-conspirator? No answer, no accountability, no name. Just a claim that it was corrected within 40 minutes of being caught red-handed. Subscribe, because the 17 people who resigned know what is in those files, and eventually one of them is going to talk.